What's up, everyone? Welcome to the 80's Allies podcast. We got Larry, we got Jim. What are you staring at?
We're here?
We're here.
We're actually doing this?
We're actually doing it.
You mean after a month and a half. That sounds a little lame. A year and a half of actually talking about this. We're sitting right here and talking about it.
Planning, developing, all that sort of thing. All that is past now. We're actually doing the thing.
We're focused and doing the thing.
We are doing the thing.
Wow.
What a time to be alive, eh?
It is.
This is fantastic.
Boy, they're really going to question why I have short hair in the later videos, aren't they?
They're good at, well, you know, much like Hollywood, everything happens out of order. So, you know.
Well, all right then. Here we are, right in front of you.
Yeah, we got some breaking news we should probably talk about. Well, it's not too breaking. It's about a week or so old. But as many of you, I'm sure, know, Masters of the Universe, major 80's franchise.
Is it?
Major 80's franchise, returning to Netflix in the fall with, of course, Kevin Smith at the helm. And recently just made the announcement of the voice actors that are going to be part of this.
Now, I deeply am so excited for this, because what Kevin Smith did, he took a wish list.
He did.
And he was like, who do I want to get on my cartoon? And number one on that list, Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker.
He's there, and not only that, but in the role of Skeletor. And I actually, Toy Fair just took place this past weekend. And apparently, while there, a bit of footage was shown, behind-the-scenes footage. And I've seen it, and I got to actually hear Mark Hamill as Skeletor, and it's fantastic. I got chills.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, following Mark Hamill from the Batman lineage, you've got Kevin Conroy,
you do,
who is the voice of Batman. In fact, when you read a Batman comic book, which we'll talk about later, you hear the voice of Kevin Conroy coming through the pages of Batman because of how sentimental that was. You also have Dietrich Bader, who played Batman again in Batman Brave and the Bold. Alicia Silverstone, who did her time as Batgirl in a horrible, horrible movie we just not...
Now, come on, now, I defend that film. I didn't think it was that hateful.
What part do you defend? Arnold Schwarzenegger going, chill?
Okay, admittedly, him going, no one puts me in the cooler, was not like the great... Okay, I get it, but... I don't know, there were parts of the movie that I found endearing. The fact that they end up going out to save... it wasn't that bad.
It looked like a 1990s fever dream.
But they saved Alfred. I mean, that was the thing in the movie I took as really, really cool, is that they, you know, it was how much he was willing to sacrifice or risk to, you know, to save his friend. And I like that.
They took Batgirl,
right,
who was supposed to be the daughter of Jim Gordon, correct, and made her some sort of relative to Alfred.
Now, look, I didn't say it wasn't a direct insult to the comic source material or anything. It is. But I don't know. I didn't think it was that horrible.
All I have to say is bat nipples. But moving on from the bat nipples, the original Skeletor is going to be premiering in this cartoon.
He is, and he's playing Mossman. I'm very excited about this.
Well, that's because you and your Mossman.
Look, it is not a fetish, okay?
I didn't say that. You said that.
No, I'm just saying that Mossman was the very, very first toy I had of the original Masters of the Universe line, and so it holds a special place in my heart. And, you know, I own several of them. And, you know, as a matter of fact, here in a very soon-to-be coming future episode, I'm going to show you how to reflock one and rescent one. I mean, as far as Alan Oppenheimer is concerned, who was originally the voice of Skeletor back in the day, now going to be the voice of Mossman. I'm glad that he was included.
Oh, so am I.
I think it was a really nice thing for Kevin Smith to do, to include someone from the old series, especially when you consider that I recently, by recently I mean last October, met Melanie Britt, who did the original voice of She-Ra. And I met her at a convention I was at, and she actually related a story that when Netflix was developing and getting ready to launch this She-Ra cartoon that they have on now, that she threw her name out there saying she'd like to be involved, and they gave her a thanks but no thanks.
That's cold.
Yeah, and then she was sort of like, well, you know, you do realize who I am. I did, and they're like, yeah, we know who you are. You're just too old. And, you know, she said, well, I don't even mean for the voice of She-Ra, like maybe one of the older characters, and they just completely dismissed her. Which I thought was like, how could you, to me, if you're developing a series based on a franchise from way back when, and you are being offered the opportunity to include one of the individuals who made that successful, and you go, nah, we're good. I mean, that tells me all I need to know about that show.
Well, one thing that I appreciated with Brave and the Bold is not only did they bring back Kevin Conroy to do some of the voice acting. I think he played Thomas Wayne in one of the episodes. They even brought back Adam West to play the mayor of the Brave and the Bold for Gotham. But I mean, I'm all excited about this. Netflix is doing some wonderful things as far as 80s cartoons, as you know, and as you're about to find out. I'm a huge Voltron fan. Yeah. They rebooted Voltron and made it the cartoon that you wanted as opposed to the cartoon that you got. So DreamWorks and Netflix are moving forward with these wonderful franchises and giving them life again and expanding their audience.
It's actually, I think, really difficult for network to compete at this point with streaming services, because the streaming services are just really thinking outside the box and how do we really develop something that really does well. I mean, even with the Masters of the Universe franchise, you have the show that Kevin Smith is putting out, but then there's an additional one coming out that's, I mean, I guess they're going to form a multiverse, so to speak, with He-Man, where it's going to be a different show altogether. And then, of course, they already have the She-Ra cartoon, which exists on its own. So, you know, they're really putting a lot of effort into this and giving something for everyone to enjoy, regardless of where you come from with it. So, I think that's pretty cool, and I think it'll be really good. I'm anxious for it. I know that it's due out sometime this fall. Not exactly sure when. I have not heard an actual drop-dead date yet, but of course, stay tuned to it. It's going to be on Netflix, and I'm sure they'll be talking more about it the closer we get.
Well, Jim's going to go reflock his Moss Man, so we'll be back soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for an exciting night of wrestling action for a good cause? Superstar Wrestling once again joins with the Muscular Dystrophy Association to bring you Never Quit 3, a fight to end muscular dystrophy. Saturday, April 18, 2020 at Turf Time Athletics in Carlisle. A double main event will first see the crown jewel Tyler Ash attempt to unseat SSW Heavyweight Champion, the Vile Lord Sleazus. Then, the Ace of Hearts, Jason Valentine, and fellow Cross Corporation member Ian Drake Esquire will attempt to stop the reign of terror of the Society of Madnesses, Prince Shango, and the Madness of Trip in a tag team casket match where both members of the team must be stuffed in a casket to win the match. In other action, two monsters in the squared circle will battle for the SSW Two Rivers Championship as 7 feet tall, 400 pounds of bulletproof Dorian Black, along with Diamond Dex Cross in his corner, will valiantly defend against 300 plus pounds of the Intimidator Robert Wright, with Corey Cross in his corner under hardcore rules. Plus, the 40-man over-the-top rope Rudy Rumble, the tag team championships defended in a gauntlet match, and a tables, Legos, and chairs match, plus much more. Tickets are only $15, with every dime raised going to the MDA. So join us Saturday, April 18th at Turf Time Athletics, 419 East High Street in Carlisle. Doors are at 5, pre-show at 5:30, and bell time at 6. For tickets, call 717-443-2593, and we will see you at ringside.
Welcome back to the 80s Allies. Now, one thing you should probably know about the 80s Allies is Jim and I came up with this idea roughly a year and a half to 2 years ago, working with each other.
Yeah.
We came to realize that not only do we have an undying love for 80s cartoons, which aren't on, well, they aren't on anymore. You have to get them through box sets. But we also share a love of toys and an understanding of different I guess, avenues or different properties, such as comic books, video games, movies, pretty much anything that started in the 1980s or was affiliated with the 1980s moving forward. That's where we're going to start our block.
Yeah, and not only that, but we're going to talk about things that are outside of that as well, because so many of the things that happened in culture at that time or whatever have had a lasting effect on pop culture going forward. So should be really, really interesting. And of course it ties in with what you do at school and what you're working on and so on and so forth, and your American studies and so on and so forth. So,
and it also ties in to you and you being part of the collector's market for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have been a collector from the time I stopped playing with toys. So it's funny to me, a lot of times I'll go into a collectible store of some kind and I'll have to correct the owner where they've got something mismatched with this or that or whatever, and because in a lot of toy lines there's not as much data out there as there should be in terms of what piece goes with what character and so on and so forth. I find myself correcting people more often than I should.
It's all right. I go to college to argue with people.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
From the professors on down, it's like, in fact, one of the arguments that I had, which this might make the B-roll, it was the difference between boys' toys and girls' toys, but, that part's probably going to be...
I'm sure that's something we will discuss at one time or another on the show, but, speaking of things that have a huge impact... Take it.
The comic book world is being currently upset right now because AT&T, which, if you are aware or not, were the inventors of data mining.
Yeah. Go
figure. You're going to learn all sorts of interesting things here on the show. They have made an announcement saying that if DC's 5G storyline, which stands for 5th Generation Storyline, is a fail, they're going to discontinue DC Comics. Now, Detective Comics reach way back before the 80s.
Yeah.
But what brings it forward to the 80s was when they decided to do their Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline, which is when they tried to take the modern day comics that they were doing in the 80s, the latter day comics that they were doing in the 30s, and trying to crunch them together to present them back to the audience instead of just ending the whole thing and starting over again.
Now, I will be the first to say I am not an enormous comic book guy. I mean, when I grew up, I really didn't have them. I didn't read them at the time. But I certainly understand the impact that DC and the comics have had on pop culture for decades. And I was shocked to read the article and see a statement whereby, we'll just get rid of it. And it was sort of this flippant, just dismissive, it's not a big deal to get rid of it. I couldn't believe it.
Well, one of the reasons why I love comic books so much, which I've told you, is they helped me learn to read. Mm-hmm. I mean, how great is it where you can open something up, you see the picture, the guy's talking to the other guy. I mean, they aren't describing or overly describing a tree or a batarang or some sort of nonsense like that. They're just getting into it, and you see the pictures and you see the dialogue and you see what's going on in people's brains. You can associate that when you're first trying to read.
And I'd like to add to that I think it's an excellent way to develop vocabulary.
It is.
Because if you want to talk about the words, especially by the bad guys, some of the verbose, they just go on and on when they monologue, and some of the things, the word choices and everything else is just incredible. And they're very much underrated in terms of how much good they can do for a child learning to read or developing mind, perhaps I should say.
Now, granted, we are going to do more adult comics here because there's a pretty big one that was written in the 80s that you and I are both going to review, and it's pretty heavy. And if you know what heavy comic book came out in the 80s, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And this will be my first time reading it.
Yes, so
I've never read it, so it'll be brand new for me.
Yeah, so for people who know what I'm talking about.
If they just keep watching,
yes,
they might...
or taking a Rorschach test, you might know what we're talking about.
Right.
But the disparaging part is after DC goes under, who's going to publish this title?
Well, it's funny you say that because I just read an update this morning that said that one of the rumors and innuendos flying around is that Marvel would take over. So everything would be under one umbrella at that point, which I don't think is a good idea.
I feel is a horrible
because I think what that's going to lead to is a dismissive nature with regard to the DC characters that they can kind of use to elevate the Marvel characters, and I'm afraid that that's what would happen. I could be wrong. Maybe that wouldn't happen that way, but I think that would be my biggest fear with it.
Well, my spin on the whole thing is in the 90s, which you're aware of the 90s, comic books went bankrupt. There was the burgeoning collector's market, which is something that we're eventually going to talk about too. As they started to overproduce comics than there were readers. People would buy these things 4, 5, 6 at a time, expecting that they were going to get a nice cash payoff.
Well, the funny thing is that's when I became aware of comics, actually, and the reason for it was because at that same time you're talking about the generation who had the toys in the 70s and 80s were now coming of age, and all of a sudden they were looking at those toys and they were valuable. And the same thing as I was, already into that part, into the collecting part. I was one of the very early adopters of that. So people were coming to me saying, hey, this stuff, you know about this stuff, it's worth something. Yeah, it is. And then invariably discussion about comics would come up, and I'd say, I don't know anything about it, and I'd refer them to somebody else. But at that time, again, people were finding comics that were number ones, and they were from way back when, and they were in great shape, and they were worth a lot, and everyone just sort of flipped out and started buying up, thinking, oh, this in 20 years is going to be worth something, and I'm send my kids to college on it. They did the same thing right around the same time when the Power of the Force 2 line came out with Star Wars, where they brought the new figures out in about, I guess that was like 95, 96, when they started bringing them out, and they all looked like they had been to the gym. And everyone bought all these things up thinking they were going to be worth something. They're worth less now than they were on the shelf back then.
Well, what happened was, I don't know if this happened in the toy industry, but I'm pretty sure that they did, as they started producing more and more and more, not realizing that the bottom is eventually going to fall out. And because they were producing more, they thought that, the next quarter was going to be just as large, or the next quarter was going to be just as large, or the next quarter was going to be just as large. But as soon as people found out how overly produced these products were, the bottom fell out, and Marvel eventually had to file for bankruptcy. I don't know how DC hung on. DC was being supported by Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
Because Warner Brothers, and I guess they sold off to AT&T, or Warner Brothers. Time Warner is probably what happened with the AT&T trade.
There's so much merger and buyouts and everything. We'll discover we talk about that a lot on this show going forward, because there's so much of it that ends up impacting the industry in some way, shape, form, or fashion.
But it bothers me to know that DC and Marvel, which I don't mind if they're if they're being produced by somebody who's going to give them the love and the care, because AT&T sure as hell does not know what to do with a comic book company.
Well, no, they don't, and that's always been my biggest argument for a lot of the takeovers and things that go on, is that, and I believe that you see a very similar thing with regard to retail, or most specifically with dead malls, which is a major topic these days. But what tends to happen is, back in the day, you had a mall developer that built a mall and cared for it and was a partner with the tenants that were there in order to bring people into the mall, to get them to buy, etc., etc. It behooved him to do that in order to make sure that his tenants stayed and they were happy. And sooner or later, that guy sold out, and some real estate investor came in who didn't give a lick about anything other than just collecting a rent check, and everything started to fall apart, and the things that made the mall started to end, and everything just sort of unraveled. And the blame is, well, it's online retail, but online retail only represents about 15% of the retail market. It's not enough to destroy the mall culture completely, and mall culture is alive and well everywhere else in the world, just not here in the United States anymore.
Well, yeah, the indoor bazaar, because that's what a mall is.
Sure.
It's an indoor bazaar.
Sure.
Bazaars are notorious, and markets are notorious around the world, but here in the United States now we have the superstore.
Well, part of the problem here, and I think one of the things that the article brings up, is that and this is sort of what I was getting to with the guys with the mall thing. In this realm, it's the viability of the intellectual property that these new owners are looking at. When AT&T buys it, they didn't buy it because it was comic books. They bought it because it was
profitable.
Superman and Batman, and that's why they bought it. And realistically, they don't give a lick what form that takes, as long as they're making profit on it. Just as an example, McFarlane Toys at Toy Fair this past weekend demonstrated that they've pretty much been given carte blanche with the universe to create whatever toy from whatever, whether it's the movies, comics, whatever, go for it. So there you go. AT&T doesn't care what it is as long as it's making them money.
Wait, okay. Back up and reverse it. Mm-hmm. McFarlane Toys is producing DC comic characters?
They are. And some of them look really cool.
Well, that's kind of troubling, considering Todd McFarlane said he wasn't going to touch any other property other than Image when it came to comic books.
Well, so but for comics, yes. But here's the thing about Todd. Todd, over the years, I feel he's gone less comics and more toys. Yeah, as the McFarlane Toys brand has grown over the years, and this is a big deal to him. He made it very, very clear in an interview I saw at Toy Fair that he was very, very excited to have this opportunity, and they're going after. It seemed to me they're going after characters you wouldn't normally see, and he's looking at it from the standpoint of what is a good-looking toy, rather than character or what have you. So we'll see what happens.
I guess we will. Hopefully Marvel will turn out all right, or not Marvel, but DC will turn out all right. Maybe the 5G storyline will be what we need it to be, bringing these characters honed in. If I was in the office of either Marvel or DC, what I would do personally is end the universe and then just start over again.
I really think that if you're a comic book person at this point and you're not buying comics, you need to go out and support your favorite comic. You need to go out there and do it, because right now this is going to decide whether or not DC survives.
Well, the thing is you can go out and you can buy your favorite comic, but it's not your favorite comic if it's not written properly.
Agreed. I understand where you're coming from, but certainly if you have an interest and you want to support it, now would be the time, I think, for sure. At least to see that it remains.
Well, and I mean, one of the joys that I have in comic books is other publishers. I mean, by all means, go check out other publishers that are producing comics. You might find something else there for you. The age range for comic book readers is changing too. The more adult that they get, I guess they feel they need to quantify the more adult storylines, and forgetting that the base of what sold their comic books in the beginning was the 9-year-old to the 16-year-old.
Yep.
Or the 9-year-old to the 14-year-old, and then the 14-year-old discovers girls and then picks back up at 18. Or at least that's what happened to me.
And on that note, we're going to go pay the bills. We'll be right back.
Gentlemen, looking for a classic haircut or shave in the Carlisle area? Stop into Big Daddy's Barbershop and Shave Parlor and experience that old-time feel you've been missing. Get a straight razor shave, haircut, or facial massage, or, hey, spoil yourself and get all three. We're located at 1548 Spring Road in Carlisle, right beside Brad's Pizza, and appointments are never needed. Spend some time in a true man zone and relive the shops of yesteryear amongst the modern-day hustle and bustle at Big Daddy's Barbershop. Find us on Facebook or visit our website at www.bigdaddysbarbershop.com.
Welcome back, and we're...
Oh my God!
What in the world are you doing, Skeletor?
I'm playing, man.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, these are your originals, are they not?
Yes, they are, which means I'm the only one who can do this with my original toys. You can't do this.
You're not going to share?
I'll let you hold one.
Oh, gee, thanks. I appreciate you.
But you're not allowed to play with them like I can play with them.
You don't even have a Moss Man. I don't even care. You can see here we've got some examples of the original Masters of the Universe figures. These date from the very early 80s, of about 81 here.
And their first production runs, too.
Yeah, and these guys, now, these have been heavily loved.
Oh, have they ever?
And so some things are loose on them and so on and so forth. But overall, they're in pretty decent shape, all things considering, even though you've chewed on the edge of the sword there. Anyway.
Hey, leave me alone.
But
4-year-old Larry enjoyed his time with these swords.
And you talk about me and Moss Man. Anyway, so here they are.
Get your Moss Man.
Just about the same time that the new series was announced, how convenient, Mattel put out there that they were going to start a new Masters of the Universe toy line that was reminiscent of these guys. It was going to be in the same scale. but just better articulated, updated, that sort of thing. This past weekend at Toy Fair, we got a pretty good look at what's coming out there. Looks fantastic.
It does. It really does.
Everything looks really, really good. I'm very, very excited about it. But there's actually sort of an even bigger sneak preview that you can get. And it's something that, for whatever reason, a lot of people have not purchased. I've actually seen it in the clearance aisle at Walmart. So
really?
So I wanted to bring it up because you happen to have it.
But the new line, which we're going to bring over here because it came with a wrestling ring, was brought out by WWE.
Well, it is Mattel, but it was licensed with World Wrestling Entertainment, and apparently this is using the body bucks that will be used in the new line. And there it is. It's Masters of the WWE Universe. And it came with 2 figures. You have...
Now, before we go any further, I do want to say...
Oh, let's talk about this, because there should be a sticker in the middle of the ring.
When we opened this, and I was like, oh, there's supposed to be a sticker in the middle of the ring, All right. So we went ahead and we opened this, and this is how the sticker came.
All fouled up and...
Somebody did not do their job properly here at Mattel with part GMN 97-962. So
Mattel.
So if you're watching, not only Mattel, but I also blame the WWE for this, because if I want quality, not quantity, I expect it to come out of this box.
Well, what's so unfortunate about this is I don't know that it went over that big, because as I stated, Walmart, at least our local one, got a ton of these in, and they are currently languishing in the discount aisle.
Well, go pick them up now.
So I don't know what's going to happen there, but you have you have John Cena here, who is, how did they word that on the box? He's the master of...
Oh yeah, how did they word that on the box?
It was amazing.
John Cena, the most unseeable man in the universe.
Yes, the most unseeable man in the universe, and it's fantastic. The weapons are translucent so that you can't see them.
There's a floating man in your hand.
Yeah, and he's got an axe and his shield. Now, what's interesting about this is there's plenty of articulation on these guys.
Give me Triple H.
Yeah, unlike the original He-Man figures that had, the arms moved at the shoulders, the legs, sort of moved with that rubber band at the hips.
Yeah, but now you got knee action.
Yeah, you had a head and you had the waist with the punch.
The head's moving. The arms are moving. You can open the arms up like so. Let me get that off. There's a wrist movement.
What's really neat is that even where the movements are the same, like you had movement at the shoulder on the old ones, but only enough to kind of swing it forward and backward. You can now, bring that straight out to the side. You have the knees, the elbows, the wrists. The only thing I found when we were messing around with this when we took it out of the box the other day was that
even the heads are different.
Yeah, the wrist is a little lame, and so what's happening here is it's difficult to get this thing to there we go.
Yeah, but what you're also getting in the box are 2 totally different and unique characters, as opposed to the He-Man set where they pretty much look the same in the same fuzzy underpants and different colors and whatnot. You can definitely tell. Oh, his fist is closed.
It is. I guess he can give a good punch there.
We have a ring. We've got 4 guys.
We do.
There's something missing.
No, there's nothing missing.
There is something totally missing.
No, there's not. There's nothing missing there.
Well, who are they going to beat up?
It's a very good point.
They're not going to beat up each other.
No, why would they?
Well, I mean, He-Man and Skeletor are ancient, and then, John Cena, you wouldn't want to ruin that.
Yeah, his legs might fall off too much.
So
we need somebody that they can beat up that's easy.
We do need somebody Now, remember, we are the 80's allies, which means we need to bring in somebody, icon from the 80's, if you will.
You're going to bring in the Iron Sheik?
No, maybe later.
Oh.
You're blowing the surprise there, Jim.
Oh. Well, you said icon. That was the first place I went.
So we're going to bring in an icon. We're going to edit that out. So we're going to bring in an icon.
Oh, the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, baby.
Oh, if only. But no, considering this is a WWE ring with WWE action figures.
You're not going to. No, not this guy.
And because he was based off of him in the beginning.
Oh, come on now.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hulk Hogan.
You're gonna bring the yellow jabroni in
Oh,
here?
yes,
Oh, no,
but
we don't
there's a
need him.
reason for that. All right, he comes up the ropes, and he slips!
Oh.
And then this happens.
They're gonna beat up on...
They're beating up on Hogan.
All right, I'm not hating on the pig pile on Hogan.
You're not gonna feed on Hogan and throw him into the ropes, and then count pounce him. We're gonna get the final the finishing move in here.
Here we go.
And we're gonna oh, he is setting to the top rope.
Almost fell off.
Well, Sheiky Baby's been off his rocker for years now, so.
True.
So here we go. Oh! Oh, and he's got him down. He's up.
3 count.
That's it.
It's over. I guess that means we're done for the day, too.
That's exactly what that means.
Well, folks, for Larry, this is Jim. This has been 80's Allies. Good God. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.